Greetings, fellow composers. Mike Verta. So, look, this keeps coming up. So let's just address it again. When you play familiar chord progressions, it orients your audience immediately because they've heard a million songs that use 1, 4, 5, and any degree in which you're trading in on that makes people feel smart and connected to the music. That's just the bottom line. They know what's coming, and there's a million permutations of it. If I do them all, any of them, if I go, everybody's brain. Okay, we're not really presenting anything new, or if we go, anything that's familiar. So much of that you can predict what's going on. And that's a very important thing to remember and not disparage, in fact, to trade on. Because that makes a connection with your audience. The simplicity and the familiarity makes a connection. It also has the disadvantage of, because it's not new and because it's been so worn, that it can get old and stale and boring quickly. This hasn't stopped us from making about 100 billion hit tunes out of these progressions. But it also makes it very difficult for us to become innovative and creative if we don't trade in on that. But that's why when you give somebody something familiar, that's like not much of a trick, but it's not as common. And so for a lot of people, simply making that little shift in modulations, oh, this is nice, this is something new. And that's always the balance when we're writing music, is something familiar and something new. If we play nonsensical chord progressions that don't have any basis in anything, it's like saying words that nobody has heard before and nobody knows what you're talking about, and they just have to take your word for it. And that gets very fatiguing because there's no way to orient yourself. You know, when somebody's talking to you, you're kind of always a little bit ahead, whether you want to be or not. Like, how long is this gonna go on? Are we coming to the end of the sentence? You know, we do this intuitively, and music is a language, exactly like English. Vocabulary, sentence structure, style, syntax, grammar, alphabet, everything. So if we play a chord progression which is totally unfamiliar, it becomes fatiguing. It doesn't make a connection. It just doesn't. When I talk about writing melodies, often we talk about powerful melodies trading in on the chord tones, important chord tones, to help orient an audience. But if you play a melody comprised of chord tones, but the chord progression itself has no basis in anything, let's just do it. Like, if it's, it doesn't matter how well you've outlined the chords. It's like, okay, and it might all be pretty, it might all be satisfying, but people can't hum that, they can't connect with it, they can't predict it, they can't connect with it as strongly, because literally it's random, right? It is random. And no matter how pretty we make the voicings, we're not actually in control of the audience's expectation. And that's the survival skill as composers. If we want to be able to really have a job writing music, then we need to predictably know when we're connected with our audience and how they're feeling at any given moment. So we can say, okay, well, they'll like this, this will work, but now I'm going to throw them a curveball. But I've got them so comfy that they'll like this curveball. This is everything. And no matter what kind of music that you write, or regardless of how strong the ideas that you're actually doing are, the control is what matters. We need to have control over it. And so we have to know this, that we have to be thinking at all times, are people going to be ready for what we're doing? Can they follow us? Are they with us? Yes. Okay, cool. Because otherwise there is functionally no difference between pretty chords next to each other and just random shit. It's just there's for an audience there's no difference. That being said, I don't want to give the impression, or at least you should be free to know, that it doesn't mean that we're bound to the same handful of progressions that are used over and over again. It just means that to the degree that we deviate from things people already expect, we have to take the burden of leading them through it and teaching them a new vocabulary. There's a lot of ways of doing it, but I'll do an example here, just as an example. And the whole point is that I'm not going to play a progression that's well worn or that we know, but it won't be disorienting, and I'll show you how we're doing it. So let's just do something like this. And again, I'm not even going to worry about a melody. And it also doesn't matter whether this is a good idea. It could be. It doesn't matter. The point, the attack, the technique is the same. So let's say we just did chords, basically. A minor in. Something like that, just whatever. This is new information for virtually any typical everyman Western ear, which is who we should probably be. It's normally who our target is. I mean, if you're writing for very specific people, fine. But normally, this is not a progression you're going to find in a whole lot of like tunes by The Cure. If they still play. So anyway, the point is that it is nonetheless not totally disorienting, even though we don't know what's coming on. And so what's the difference between this stuff that I'm doing and those just random chords? Neither one of them have precedent, so why is one disorienting and the other one is orienting? Well, in this last example, one thing that I'm doing very carefully is I'm giving the audience the primer with which to understand the language I'm speaking. It's a new language. The motions, the chord motions are a new language. And I'm giving them a cheat sheet, a key. And I'm doing that in a couple of two ways. Number one, I'm actually doing very little inside of the progression itself. I'll show you what I'm doing. And the other thing is I'm repeating it a couple of times at least each to let people know that this is intended and here is a pattern. Because two of anything represents a pattern for our brains, whether we want it to or not. So if I play that, my next motion, really it's F minor over A. It represents essentially a chromatic half step, right? Right? It's basically, you could think of it like A minor to F minor. Okay? So I'm establishing as part of the primer that half-step chromatic motion is a pattern for you to pay attention to. And here in my left hand I was doing this. There's your chromatic motion. I do it again, so you know I mean this. And now the brain is primed to look for things which agree with the rules I've now set up. So in my second thing here, which is really a D flat major seventh, then I did, again, I was basically keeping the F minor, just turned it into a D flat. I'm also doing a chromatic motion. Again, just one, it's the difference. So this progression, while this progression does not have any particular, we can't immediately think of 20 tunes that do that. it's saying to you, yes, this is what we're doing now. Look for half-step chromatic motions, 2 at a time, followed by 2 at a time. As soon as you have that little set, if I continue that pattern, the listener becomes oriented. Oh, okay. This is new, but I've already got enough information to follow it. That when I hear the next thing he's going to do, the thing after that will be a chromatic step, just like the first 2 behind it. That's what people will do instinctively, and it'll connect them to it. So we got this, and then we did. Now I moved up a half step. So now into D minor, and then B flat major second inversion. And again, it represents a half step, a chromatic half step motion. In this case, from D minor, or whatever it was, yeah. And now I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? Well, what I did was that's the most motion that I did, but you can feel the half step. And you could continue from this. Okay. So I could do a billion examples like this, but I don't need to, because the concept isn't very difficult. In this case, even though I'm not trading in on a familiar chord progression, I'm training the audience on what this progression is going to be about. I'm giving them the rules, the structural rules, so that they can begin the process of connecting and anticipating, which will reorient them and make them connected to the music. And in a lot of ways, then they'll enjoy that sometimes more than your well-worn chord progressions, because they have the sense that this is all new stuff, but yet they're still understanding of it. Nobody likes to feel stupid. Everybody likes to feel smart. And when they can predict something and be a part of it, especially for people who are not musicians, the act of connecting with the music in an intuitive sense makes them feel musical. It's part of what people love about music. So we just have to always, always, always be protecting that relationship. It's everything. So again, as a composer, you should absolutely be able to write tunes all day long that are interesting and compelling, that use good old-fashioned Tom Petty chord progressions. You should be able to do that. That's part of your control set. It can't be said that you are in control of the complex if you aren't in control of the most simple things. It's like, well, I can't paint a stick figure. I can only paint Picasso's. Bullshit. You're not in control of your craft. So it should absolutely be part of your skill set to be able to write using 1-4-5 progressions. But for the places that you want to say your own thing, put your own stamp, make your own innovations, and bring your audience to new places, you can do that, but you've got to do it slowly, and you've got to make the rules very clear to them. Set up a precedent, show them the pattern, repeat the pattern, and fulfill the rules that you set up for them. If you do that, then your harmonic options explode exponentially. You can do almost anything. Anything. Two of anything makes a pattern. If you do this, if you just play whatever, let's say, I don't know. Any time from that point on that I go, the audience is like, oh, that thing. It almost doesn't matter what it is. The pattern of it breeds instantly some sort of familiarity. But if I go from that thing to just more random shit, and I don't connect it, and I don't make patterns of it, and I don't lead the audience to it, it becomes noise. It just becomes aleatoric noise. It becomes nothing. So the degree to which we continue to go back and forth between the familiar and the new is almost always where the sweet spot exists. The point at which we know confidently that we can make our audience feel a given thing at a given time. And when we can do that, that makes it's job security. you know, then we know we can please the client. We know what we should always be able to do. Here's the thing that everybody's going to like, you know. It's like if you're a comedian, you know, and you had certain jokes that you knew were going to kill, and you want to try new material, and you want to go out and you want to do stuff, but if you're losing the room, you've got a couple that you know you can pull out, and the room's going to be fine. It's just like that in writing music or anything else, and that's part of your control. Control is greater than the individual thing you want to say or the strength of the idea. I mean, are these chords that I'm doing, is this like some amazing thing? I don't know, probably not. It doesn't matter. The rules apply regardless. So take these concepts and now you go do, your better, wonderful thing. But don't lose sight of the importance of holding on to your listener and making them go with you. That's what makes them like you. All right. See you again.